Sorry, folks. I thought by turning my camera off, I would also have the microphone on. Okay, well, that's embarrassing, but yeah, can you guys hear me yet? No? Yes? Everyone can hear me. I'm getting notified. All right. So, yes, I've just been on for a little while with no sound. Okay. Don't worry. Do let me know. Let me know. There should be sound. Okay. Yes. All right. Good. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, I guess like I said, like I said, but you didn't hear me say it. I've been live streaming the last few days, still sort of figuring out how you know everything works and what buttons to push and what buttons not to push. Yeah, I'm gonna not be have my camera on screen because I want enough room on the screen, enough real estate for the chart and the QR codes. Because I do, as they say on South Park, got to make my nut. So yeah, I got mouths to feed and what have you. So the QR code's got to be there. That is how I ply my trade. But I do love to talk astrology. I want to get better at this sort of monologue thing that I'm doing. I have my moments. I'm getting more and more comfortable with it. I'm importing a chart file right now. So, Nichepso, it's you guys didn't hear me say it. I'm importing a file from SolarFire. I was demonstrating how it works, and but it's a very big file. I've been amassing a database of thousands of chart files on a variety of subjects. For about 27 years now. Yeah, I got my first SolarFire in 1999, and instantly started compiling information. So this is importing a really large file, my file on American history, and I'm importing it into Nichepso. And even though it's taken a few minutes, like I said, it's very big. There are other files I have that maybe only have a few hundred charts, and those will be in a few seconds. But this is a big one. But yeah, just to catch up while that's happening, I'm aiming to do more live streaming. I enjoy it. I think if I can get comfortable enough, I might be half decent at it. I do like I'm getting more comfortable with the live reading as well. I used to not be as comfortable with that, but it works in this format because the main reason I was never comfortable was I am very protective of the privacy of the people I read for. Astrology consultations can um, become really intimate really fast. Not in an inappropriate sense of the word, of course. I'm a professional here, but I mean intimate in terms of like just how deep into someone's life, including a lot of elements of their vulnerability that come up. And I'm never comfortable being responsible for someone else's dignity in public. So that's always been, I think, a part of what I was not comfortable with. But in this format, people text their data, and I talk about some elements of the chart, and it's not the same venue, it's not the same approach that I apply when I'm in a one-to-one consultation with someone where there's privacy and context and what have you. But yeah, it's the way I do a 1 hour consultation. I mean, in lots of cases, I'm sure it would be fine in terms of what is revealed in the public, but you never know. And I don't want to be in that position where someone is clamming up because they're in public, but I need there needs to be safety in this work. So I take that responsibility very seriously. The responsibility for people's privacy and dignity because of just how deep the conversations can go sometimes. All right. I'm glad people are enjoying. Oh, there's Kara Andrews again. Hey there. Bardo Teachings, Lolita Klein, 3144 at CD 3777. Jackie Kranz, 5825. Lakshmi Priya Vakumar, 5781. Okay. Well, I'm glad everyone can hear me. I'm sorry that the software is still loading up, only at 35%. No, I'm going to cancel this. I don't want to take that long. All right. I will import a different file, one that isn't so large so that we don't have to spend a lot of time waiting for it. Yeah, why don't I know where I'm going. And we'll be off to the races soon. Thank you for bearing with me. I'll just take this file. This is just a few hundred, I think. Yeah, 279. This 279 file should go pretty quick. All right, I'm having some issue. I've imported a lot of files, so I'm not sure why I'm having an issue. Oh, there's my American history file. Okay, this exercise wasn't necessary after all. I thought I had deleted that one and I had to re-import it, but there we are. And I will open this here. There he is. This friggin' guy. Just gonna set this up. All right, I'm almost ready. Just tweaking something here. Where did I put that? Oh, there he is. Okay. All right. There we go. This friggin' guy. And one other chart from this folder, and then I'm ready to start talking again. All right, there we go. Right. So I was talking about the other reason why I thought Vance would wind up being president. Before Trump's term is over. And I'm reminded of, this is Lyndon Johnson. We don't have a time of birth for him, but this is his date of birth. And the outer chart is when Kennedy was assassinated. I think I've got the Lyndon Johnson chart set for sunrise. I think there are some reports he was born in the morning, but we don't know where the moon is, but everything else is pretty much there. And the moon can't be that far, from the position it holds. So Uranus was on this stuff. Actually, it's kind of curious that the moon and the sun look reversed there. I'm going to have to resize these glyphs. There we go. That's more. Still weird that the zodiacal order is a little off. I'm going to have a word with John about that. You see, we are still working out the bugs a little bit, and that is one thing that is irritating me is how the planets get clumped together. But I know John's working on fixing that. All right, well, we'll just have to live with it. Obviously, the sun comes before the moon. How can Mars be at 2, the sun be at 3, and then the moon's at 9, and Mercury's at 10? That is a problem, admittedly. But that's the beauty of this software is when there is a problem like this, John fixes it. So yeah, we're still tweaking it. Anyway, long story short, when Johnson ran on the ticket with Bill Clinton, John F. Kennedy. What am I saying? I saw the chart there. Good Lord, I'm digging a deeper and deeper hole. Okay, so this is the inauguration. This should do. Johnson, as a vice president, was kind of the J.D. Vance of his day. And this Pluto North Node conjunction that was passing over all his stuff when he ran in the election. He'd been during the 1950s, he was a senator and he was, the whatchamacallit of the Senate, the big cheese, whatever they call it. And, he took a step down in power in order to accept the vice presidency to Kennedy, really, because, this was a guy who wanted to be president his entire life. And this was as close as he was going to get. He was going to take his chances that something might happen to Kennedy and he could then step into the presidency. And of course, that is what happened. And I think of Pluto, going over Johnson's sun during here, this is the inauguration, but the previous year it was with the North Node. It was much closer to Johnson's sun. And it really signified how he was taking this step down in power. But then, of course, a few years later, then Uranus came along and boosted him right up, and he became president, only to his eventual detriment. So it's that Pluto Sun thing. Johnson was really abused by the Kennedys, or at least he felt abused, I should say. I don't really have much sympathy as such, but he felt very sort of, invisible, and that the Kennedys would make fun of him and his wife and all this stuff. So he was really put upon, not unlike, Vance is these days. Again, not much sympathy, but, I'm sure Vance feels as put upon, if not more, as Lyndon Johnson did back between 1961 and 63. So that's another, not only is there the Pluto-Sun synastry between Vance and Trump, and the synastry being reflected in the recurrence transit from Inauguration Day in 2025, but also Johnson as a sort of proto-Vance, the derided and abused vice president who suddenly finds himself occupying the top seat in the House. And it's always amazing. Like people know the vice president is going to replace a president when the president goes. But it always seems to shock people when the thing happens, when Truman replaced Roosevelt or when Johnson replaced Kennedy. These things aren't inevitable until they happen. But that's been my thinking. And I've been talking about Vance becoming, succeeding Trump in this term, I think even before they were elected, because I was always quite adamant that that Trump would win that election. And everything was going as I thought it would. And then the one thing was just thinking that it would all be wrapped up by the end of April. Certainly April accelerated a lot. But Trump has been able to squeeze another 6 weeks or so out of that prediction, making it null and void. But the general contour of what I described and what I've always been describing is largely there. And April was a month where so much accelerated with regard to Trump's relationship to even his own people, let alone the ones who already hated him. So yeah, more about all of this, this really interesting stuff that is not going to go away overnight, even once Trump does, because we're going to have JD in office, and that'll be a whole other thing. All right, maybe I'm going to close up the political charts. I really just I open up with excuse me, with a little bit of looking at a celebrity chart. I was looking at Elizabeth Taylor earlier today. I'll probably redo that at some point. A lot of other charts I'm going to look at and go through the lifetime and explain various astrological concepts. But I'm also down with doing some mini readings for folks here. I am promoting my services as a consulting astrologer. That is how I feed the mouths that count on me feeding them, and whatnot. So I do have that QR code that offers 20% discount on 1 hour astrology consultations. You can avail yourself of that if you want a full-on private reading. And at the top corner, there is also a QR code for Nichepso Astrology software, which is the software that you see me using here. That's a 20% off a lifetime subscription. So Nichepso is a subscription astrology software service. The reason we offer it by subscription is because we're continuing to develop it, and it requires the investment to keep it going. But the great thing is, if you do want a Nichepso subscription and you scan that QR code in the corner, you get a 20% off the subscription price for as long as you keep the subscription. If you have it for 30 years, you'll have it for 30 years. Unless you cancel, and then you lose the privilege of the discount if you want to re-sign up. Okay, David AC90 is asking if I have Stephen Miller's chart. I do have Stephen Miller's chart. Give me a sec here. I'll put him up there. I'll be right with you. All right. So I think we have a birth time for Stephen Miller. I definitely have him in this folder. We can have a look at him if you like. But then I will pivot to doing some live consultations. Here he is. There he is. There's this fucking guy. Excuse my language. But no lie detected. That's exactly what he is. There we go. All right. I just took the extra time to put a photo in there, but I didn't crop it properly. See, that's the thing. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. 4 planets in Virgo. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? But I mean, we can't have Steven's head cut off there, at least not in the photo. In real life, sure, but not in a photo. That's just not done. Have a little style. But yeah, if we want to cut his head off in real life, that's not so serious. Dark humor, folks. Gallows humor. Okay, so Stephen, Capricorn rising, Sun at 0 Virgo. Oh, he's got the South Node crossing over his Sun. That's what he's got. And he's 40 going on 41. So he's moving from a Taurus to a Gemini perfection year. So Uranus comes into Gemini in the sixth house. No, I don't think he's going to be, I don't think he's going to be in Vance's team at all. I think he's on his way out for sure. He's just not in control of what's going on around him. So the South Node is coming up to the Sun. It's not inherently unfavorable, but it does imply that he's at the mercy of what comes to him. He has no agency, no real hold on the course of events in his own life right now. Is the general sort of South Node thing. It's you're subject to the whims, the demands, the circumstances, or the needs of someone else. And well, we can certainly imagine one demanding person taking over Stephen's agency, but even once he's gone, it just doesn't look like this guy's got much else going for him. So I mean, if nothing else, this guy should be on his ass, if that's not what we're looking at inside the chart. No, that's his face. That's right. It's hard to know his ass, his face. Hard to really always be sure which side we're looking at with this guy. But there you go. You wanted Stephen Miller. You got him. I don't think he sticks around. And he's moving from the Taurus to the Gemini perfection year. So whereas while he's still 40, there's some element of trying to hold on to things. This just implies that it's not going to happen. All right, Lolita Klein. I'll look at your chart, Lolita. Absolutely. For fellow Montrealais. Let me see here. Actually, what I should do, I'm just going to set up my iPad to show your text so I don't have to keep, there we are. There's my live stream. And for fellow Montrealais, all right, I just heard my own voice. Interesting that there's a slight delay. Okay. Yeah, someone also wants me to talk about Mark Carney. I can do that. Okay. But apparently you're not on YouTube. May 3rd, 71, 1128, Montreal. Okay. May 3rd, 71. Right. Was that? And we are. All right, Lolita, who is only 3 years younger than me and from my hometown. We've probably been to the same parties or something like that. Or maybe you didn't grow up in Montreal. Maybe you were just born there and you left in 1980. You abandoned us to our fate. Just kidding around. All right. So Lolita is a 1971 Taurus. Lolita was born within a day or so of when I dropped a brick on my toe and broke it, the only bone I've ever broken in my life. I was 2.5 years old. Our family had just moved into our new apartment, not, it wasn't an apartment. It's, one of those Montreal triplexes in the plateau on de Bouillon. My beloved childhood home on de Bouillon, we moved there May 1st, 71, back when moving day in Montreal used to happen on May 1st and not July 1st. And the funny thing to me is this Mars retrograde, Mars in Capricorn headed toward a retrograde in Aquarius, because there's only one other time that that my toe has been hurt, and it was March 27th, 2020, right at the beginning of lockdown of COVID. And my wife and I were watching TV, and she dropped a heater on my foot, this like sort of like a radiator on wheels, and she split what I would call my index left toe, for want of a better term. It needed 9 stitches, and and within minutes of this thing being dropped on my toe, I was in a lot of pain, and my wife was going to rush me to the hospital. But I did take the time to tell my stepkids that, hey, Anna's just dropped this radiator on my toe, and Mars is at 29 Capricorn, headed toward an eventual retrograde later this summer. And the last time this happened to me was in 1971, when Mars is at 28 Capricorn on its way to a retrograde. So there's something about my feet and their safety that is apparently compromised when Mars is moving that slowly at 29 Capricorn. So that's the thing about Lolita's Mars is... she was born 68 days before it went retrograde. But in Martian terms, that is not a long time. When Mars did go retrograde, I think it was around 21 Aquarius, something like that. I think it says here. Yeah, 21 Aquarius. There you are. So it has less than a sign to travel in those 68 days. Mars, the rules for Mars retrogrades are so different from any of the other planets, from the interior ones, Mercury and Venus, and then any of the others, Jupiter outward. The rules are very different for a couple of reasons. One of them is indeed their relative distance from Earth and the Sun. But the other is Mars. The orbit of Mars is very warped and elliptical. It's really the antithesis of Venus, not only in the mythological and archetypal sense, but literally in the astronomical sense, in the pure astronomy of each planet's relative cycle. So whereas the cycle of Venus is almost perfectly circular and even, and Venus goes retrograde every 8 years, and every successive retrograde station 8 years later is always a little earlier, about 2 degrees earlier and 2 calendar days earlier than the previous time. So over time, a Venus retrograde, the cycle wanders into the previous sign, so that over a 251-year period, you will get a Venus retrograde transit through all 12 signs of the zodiac in equal distribution, even though in the course of one human being's lifetime, it'll just be, the same 5 signs. Mars is totally different. Mars, no matter how much time you give it, will always spend far more time in Cancer, Leo, and Virgo, and far less time in Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, because of the warped elliptical orbit it has. So with that in mind, Mars retrogrades in Aquarius are very rare. They only occur once every 47 years. So Lolita was born in 1971 with this Mars at the very end of Capricorn. And basically Mars didn't go retrograde in Aquarius again until 2018. And then in 2020, when the radiator was dropped on my toe, that was when it would go retrograde in Aries in September, but it was at 29 Capricorn, and I was anticipating the retrograde. So it was funny to me that a slowing down, decelerating Mars at 29 Capricorn had that effect for me. Now, having said all this, let's actually talk about Lolita's chart, now that I've gone into that little anecdote that I'm sure you are all riveted by. Lolita was born with the South Node rising and the North Node on the descendant. I was talking about the nodes again earlier today, but it bears repeating. It's because it really is fundamental to astrology. The lunar nodes, in my opinion, they're the thing that really anchors the astrology in so much of what you're going to wind up saying in terms of anticipating making predictions or other facets like that. They really key you into a basic rhythm of any human being's life, and it's this universal rhythm that plays out for everyone in really the same way. So, without further ado, I'm going to add a chart wheel here, and we're going to look at some solar returns in Lolita's life, and then she can later chime in and give us some sense of whether we've captured the spirit. Okay, so this is Lolita's birthday in May of 1980. Oh, the same month as the referendum. Maybe that was the month you ran away from Montreal. I'm just kidding. And what happens to everyone at the age of 9 is the North Node comes to the South Node and vice versa in the solar return. And especially for charts like Lolita's where the nodes are on the angles, these tend to be very dramatic shifts. Even I mean, they're reasonably dramatic for just about anyone, but when the nodes are in the angles, you can really anticipate this. So what happens is at the age of 9, you have this birthday, the nodes are making this half return. And what a person does is we always turn our back on some facet of who we've been. We break with some part of our childish selves, and we pivot and move into a new direction, one that is stepping out of our comfort zone and seemingly uncharacteristic of what we would be thought to do. And it's always an adjustment. It's always a matter of a pivot of in a direction that we're not especially comfortable in, and that we need to grow into. Like when you buy shoes and when you're a child and you're gonna, it's not an instant fit. You're gonna have to grow into them. So when we turn 9, it's not so much about being who we are anymore. What the nodal half return introduces us to is we're now going to try to be who we think we need to be or who we want to be, rather than just sort of being who we are. So this is what happens at 9 at that first nodal half return. We make this pivot and change direction seemingly. And that holds until we turn 18. And Lolita turned 18 in 1989. And you can see the South Node was headed for the natal South Node. And so the nodal cycle is 18 and a half years. So between the 18th and 19th birthdays, this is her 19th birthday, and you can see the South Node has come back to the natal position. And the transformation that she initiated at the age of 9 has now completed itself, and she's restored. All 18, 19-year-olds, their birthdays have a nodal return. This is why 18, 19-year-olds feel like they're just perfectly formed adult human beings. But then, of course, life keeps moving on, and Lolita sadly eventually had to go and turn 28 years old. And when she did that, she had another birthday with a nodal half return. Only this time, she's not a 9-year-old kid who's maybe going to stop playing with dolls and start flirting with boys or girls or whoever. But at 28, again, we are compelled. It's a year before the Saturn return. It's absolutely the precedent for the 29th birthday, the Saturn return. But at 28, the nodal half return, we're again breaking with part of our past, turning our back on part of who we've been, and pivoting instead in a new direction, and stepping out of our comfort zone and trying to be who we think we need to be or who we want to be, rather than just be who we are. And again, it's a bit of an adjustment. It's a bit of an experiment, and it's not as comfortable as the nodal return, but it's where we grow and advance and avoid stagnation. So that transformation completes itself when Lolita turned 37, which I guess was in 2008. And indeed, at 37, the nodes have made a return. Lolita completed the transformation she initiated at 28, and she's completed her second whole nodal cycle. But then life keeps going. Eventually, Lolita turned 46 years old. And at 46, the nodal half return is starting to come in. 46 is also a Mercury return. Oh, yeah, you must have been born right at a Mercury retrograde, because that Mercury in the solar return is retrograde, and it's got to be a cyclical return. So you must have been born like on a, yeah, there we go. I just passed it. Your Mercury is stationary. Ta-da. And how did I know that? Even though there's no symbol, I knew that because Lolita's 46th birthday should have a Mercury cyclical return, but this birthday Mercury is retrograde. Therefore, she must be born on a stationary Mercury, because on the 46th birthday, everyone's Mercury is very, very close to the natal position. So there you go. That's how I was able to figure out that her Mercury was stationary without any symbol telling me. Simple trick. And the nodes are making the half return. And then a year later, when she turned 47, the nodal half return is still very much in effect. Like, you know, it sort of happens in between those two birthdays, or it covers both birthdays. It's not an event, it's a process. But then the 47th birthday is also interesting, because not only is there a nodal half return, but you get a Mars return. There's that Mars. It's getting ready to go retrograde in Aquarius again, just like it was when she was born. Right. So her Lolita's Mars, just to reestablish this, she was born 68 days before it went retrograde at 21 Aquarius. And her birthday, her 47th birthday, Mars was 54 days before it went retrograde at 9 Aquarius. And in Mars terms, that's close. Especially, I mean, Mars retrogrades in Aquarius only occur once every 47 years. So you get it. It's not merely that Mars is in the same sign, a few degrees apart. The idea is that it's a cyclical return. We've become used to sort of thinking of the planets in this very one-dimensional way, right? Planet, sign, house. That's it, like a flat piece of paper. But astrology tracks the planets. We're looking at their speed and their visibility. There are all these dynamics and nuances to the planets that modern astrology largely, omits, and we just sort of, look at the symbols and the numbers spinning around and interpret them. But when you're really getting down to looking at astrology as a map of time, these cyclical returns are so instructive when it comes down to reading the chart. The other thing that happens at 47 is actually, this is also a Jupiter return, believe it or not, even though they're about 14 degrees apart. The reason for this is the Jupiter cycle is not a perfect 12-year cycle. It's less than 12 years. I forget if it's 11.8, 11.7, something like that. So for this reason, there's this really interesting thing. It's almost as fascinating and mind-blowing to me as the fact that the moon is the same degree as the sun, in our sky, when obviously in real life they're not at all the same size, but they appear to be. And then this is another facet of that, a hint that, astronomy has a touch of grand design behind it. So with Jupiter, you get your first Jupiter return, cyclical return, at the age of 12. You get the second one at 24, where it aligns with the cycle of Venus, because Venus has an 8-year cycle, and Jupiter at 24, it aligns with that. Then the third one will be at 36, but then by the time you get to 48, Jupiter will actually be closer to the natal position at the 47th solar return than it's going to be at the 48th. And it's this sort of miracle of astronomy to me that the cycle of Jupiter aligns with Venus early in life at 24, and then later in life with Mars at 47, and then much later at 59 with Saturn and Mercury, actually. So there are these different birthdays where the cycles of planets sort of come together. They coincide, with the solar return at specific ages. So when you turn 32 and 64, both Venus and Mars are making cyclical returns. They'll be very close to the natal position in the solar return chart. And then, 47 is Mars and Jupiter. 56 is the nodes in Venus. 59 is Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn. 79 is Mercury and Mars. And they're really worth tracking if you know those cycles. It covers a lot of shortcuts in terms of what you can achieve. All right, so that I've gone and abandoned Lolita at the age of 47. That's not fair, because she hasn't been 47 in nearly a decade. So then the next thing, this is what brings us to where we are now. In fact, why don't I just click the button called Now, and here we are. And you can see that as we speak, the South Node is approaching Lolita's natal South Node, because she is 55 years old. And you guys are going to be dazzled by my math skills. I don't know how to blow this to you. Um, um, it's late for me, okay? It's after midnight. Break it to you. I don't know how to break it to you, but after 55, Lolita is going to turn 56. And 56 is a magical birthday, because 56 is a nodal return and it's a Venus return. 56 being a multiple of 8. And this birthday, and really magically in Lolita's case, the age of 56 is a 9th house perfection year. So she'll be having the Venus return in the perfected sign. And that adds to the magic. Her chart is diurnal, so I'm not worried about that Saturn, not at all. This is the guy you got to worry about in Lolita's life. Probably not that. The nodal return brings some friends on her natal Mars. There's a lot going on here. Obviously, I probably couldn't pick it all out in the abstract. But what I will say is 56 does tend to be it's that third nodal return, and it tends to be the birthday where people really feel like they've become the person they were always trying to be or always thought they were inside. Like David Bowie said, the best thing about getting older is finally being the person you really are, or you were really meant to be. I'm mangling his words, poor guy. But yeah, that's the really interesting thing about the nodal cycle, and whatever's going on in Lolita's life. She's completing that cycle, and she's arriving at a kind of peak, where she can really sort of fathom the journey, the growth, the cycles that she's passed through from birth to here. And the way these lunar nodal cycles, move, you get the half return at 9, the return at 1819, the half return at 28, the return at 37. Basically, it's a binary in life. You go through one decade in the natural nodal order, and then another decade with the reversal, and then another decade with the natural order, and then another with the reversal, so on and so forth. It's another binary of nature. It's like exhaling and inhaling, or night and day, any of these types of things. And and with that in mind, you can always, whatever else is going on in a person's life, you can get to this part of the pattern, and it always informs whatever other astrology you're going to be doing. It's a very different thing. And for instance, here, speaking of the nodes and what they mean, Lolita's born with the South Node rising. So the South Node vibes its way through life. It's reading the room. It's living in the moment. Life is a grand experiment where one dare not have too much of a plan, because it's more marvelous to sort of experience the spontaneity of things, and trust in the kismet that the South Node has. The South Node, I mean, if you believe in magic, the South Node is definitely the point that brings the magic. If you don't believe in magic, then the South Node signifies things that sure seem magic. Those occasions in life when things just sort of work out on their own, as if, dare I say it, by divine hand. Whatever the reality behind it, it sure seems like it. It's those moments that, that make one suspect that such a force might exist. And whereas the North Node, people who have the North Node on the ascendant, the North Node is conscious and deliberate and proactive. The North Node feels like if I don't do it, it's not going to happen. Whereas the South Node, just things happen to the South Node, so it's not proactive. It's reactive and responsive. It's magnetic. So people with the South Node rising, they're great observers and listeners, and they can wind up in fields where that skill set is very valuable. You do get your counselors and your therapists, certainly, because those are jobs where you sit down and listen to someone else talk for a long time and then don't say anything until it's time to do some analysis. It's always responsive. You also get your documentary filmmakers, your recording engineers, your court reporters, your research scientists. These are people who observe and listen, and their jobs involve not being proactive but reactive. You don't you're the fly on the wall. You're not supposed to sort of initiate something. You're supposed to respond. That's the general tenor of that. But then when we have those birthdays where there's a nodal return, when Lolita turned 9 and when she turned 28 and when she turned 46, 47, the North Node was close to her ascendant, and she wasn't vibing her way through life. She was being very proactive and moving in a direction that had an objective, which is not her usual MO, but it's the MO that you get when you're having the nodal half return and you were born with the South Node rising. The nodal half return can be, kind of like that Star Trek episode where Spock comes up with a goatee because he's from another dimension. The nodal return, the nodal half return, rather, is sort of where you get the bizarro version of yourself. Because you're not yourself. It's not that it's so much insincere, but you're in the middle, or at the initiating point of a transformation, of a growth toward your who you're going to be in the next decade. So that's the interesting facet to all this. You have the natal chart, and the nodes certainly play a part in describing the person, as an individual. But no matter who you are and where the nodes are when you're born, you experience the transit, and you do go through the different phases. You do have your chance, even if you have the South Node rising. You do have those moments in your life where you are living your life like you're a North Node rising, and conversely, the same is true for people who are born with the North Node rising. All right. Let's see. 47 lost 100 pounds. Okay, well, that's a shift in a direction. Mind-blowing, huh? Okay, all right. 47 moved back to Quebec. 47, your mom passed away. 47 lost 100 pounds. Okay, so 47 is massive. And 47, so you get it. Because anyone born in 1971 was likely to have a very interesting year when they turned 47. For instance, actually, I can think of a good example. I'm going to dip back into celebrities for a second, and then I'll come back to some chart reading, because there's definitely there's someone else born in 1971, someone not nearly as likable as Lolita, I'm sure, because he's only a phony Canadian, not a real one. I am speaking, of course, about the one, the only, Elon Musk. And so Elon was born with Mars in Aquarius. He's born nearly 3 months after Lolita, and his Mars, he was born 13 days before the retrograde station at 21 Aquarius. So his Mars is very, very, very close to that retrograde station. Like I said, it went retrograde, I believe, at 21, and it's with the North Node. And then when Elon was 47, he did something that I'm sure our friend Lolita would not do. Something most Montrealers I know do, but I'm sure our Lolita would not do. He smoked a joint on Joe Rogan on September 6, 2018, about 2 months or so after he turned 47. So there we go. This is Elon's chart with the chart for his appearance on Joe Rogan. You can see the nodal half return. You can see the Mars. By this point, the retrograde was over and it was coming out of here. But his solar return that year would have had a Mars also on the verge of going retrograde. So, yeah, this is when Elon went nuts. And keep in mind, like that's the other thing is 6 years after this, Mars went retrograde in Leo. Which was right after the election. Literally, he's holding a chainsaw and doing all that crazy Doge stuff, and that was the sort of the counterpoint to the Mars retrograde in Aquarius from 2018. Hopefully, our friend Lolita has not been so irresponsible with chainsaws and people's livelihoods. Many people were born in 1971. This whole node Mars cycle plays out in all their charts, but each one in their own context, in their own way. But there you go. Let's get rid of this guy and get back to the fun stuff. Let's see. All right, David's leaving because he wants to go watch the World Cup. So I guess he wanted me to do Mark Carney. I'll do him some other time. By do him, I mean read his chart. I'm not, going there. All right, Lolita says, yeah, no drugs for you. Okay, so that's good. Don't go on Joe Rogan and smoke weed and send your stock price down. That's good advice if I've ever dished it out. All right, cool. Well, I'm glad. Lolita, that's the thing. I'm glad you got something out of that. Like I said, I mean, the mini readings I do on the live stream, I intend them to be like little, little study assignments for everyone watching, and not merely the personal end of a reading. But that's the beauty of knowing these synodic cycles. I didn't have to go into all the squares and trines and not that there's anything wrong with them, but I have developed my astrology in a way that I want to be able to do a lot with very little. So just by explaining the nodal cycle, and because you were born in 1971, there was no way I wasn't going to talk about Mars. But just doing that, I was able to sort of immediately send us to the age of 47, which was clearly pivotal in so many ways. And thank you for sharing. I'm glad we got to connect. But just out of curiosity, what part of Montreal did you grow up in? I'm wondering if we did know each other. Montreal is the kind of place where, like, it is a city, but if you're an Anglo, it is also like living in a village. And chances are, we know a lot of the same people. Okay, you'll book a reading. That's fine. We can chat Montreal then. Thank you for doing that. All right. Let's see, who is our next candidate. Okay. I want to pick whoever is next. Who am I missing here? Okay. Oh, someone from Halloween Iris, October 31st, 84. Wow. You're born a day before Chris Brennan. Lucky. All right. Let's give you a look then. Whoops. Well, I just realized, of course, it's you, Iris. I know you. I was like, hey, this person has the same birthday as Iris. Oh, it is Iris. Okay. I think I just didn't know you were born in Orangeville. I think of you as being an Albertan. But yeah, let's have a look at you. Although I think I already have some idea. All right. So here's Iris, born on Halloween. Quite the Scorpio, like I said, reminds us of Chris Brennan. Maybe I can make these glyphs a little smaller now. It depends on the chart. This is one of the things that we are going to keep tweaking. It depends on the chart, but it should be a bit more automatic. But there you go. It'll have to do for now. Iris is Virgo rising. She's got a loaded third house stellium. You've got the Pluto, the Sun, the Saturn, the Mercury, the South Node. And then, everything's sort of in this whole pattern here. It is very Chris Brennan-esque, except he's an Aquarius rising and you're Virgo rising. So clearly a nocturnal chart. The only thing on above the horizon is the North Node in the ninth. And the most recent solar return for Iris. This is how we do the solar returns in Nichepso. Very simple, very easy. Boom. All right. And then very easy also to make a bi-wheel. I love it. I love how easy it is to make a bi-wheel with Nichepso. In my practice, I'm always, of course, looking at bi-wheels. And so to be able to construct one that easily is a real time saver. So this is Iris's birthday last October when she turned 41. 41 is an Aquarius perfection year with Pluto there in the sixth house. It's also the sign that she has the moon, which is the sec-light of the chart. And Saturn itself, of course, is in Aries, which is her eighth house. And Pluto in Aquarius in the perfected sign, almost everyone, pretty much everyone that I have spoken to since 2024, who is in an Aquarius perfection year, when I'm speaking to them, there is some facet of AI that becomes really central in their lives. I mean, sometimes they're literally, programmers or work with it, but one way or the other, it's like it appears to be this thing that becomes very central in the daily life experience. Iris, you were born with the Sun conjunct Pluto. Pluto is, also has a sort of a personal facet to you. It's not just, it doesn't just signify, emerging technology. But still, that's been one pretty consistent thing since 2024, kind of astonishing that way. The other thing is, of course, the South Node. Excuse me, I was going to sneeze, I thought. The South Node was conjunct Iris's ascendant at the time of the solar return. So Iris's year of being 41 is not unlike being Lolita for a year, the last person I was reading for, because Lolita had the South Node rising in her natal chart. And this is the birthday year where Iris has the South Node on her ascendant. Now, she's already natally quite a South Node person. She was 37 a few years ago when she had the nodal return. That would have been her birthday in 2021. So it's just moved from here to here. But now that it's on the ascendant, it really is, this is a year where, again, it's not inherently unfavorable, but whatever is happening, it has nothing to do with your own agenda, your own proactive efforts. It comes down to you, how you respond or react to what is coming your way. The circumstances of your destiny over the course of this year come down to other people's needs or demands or circumstances. And you're like, you're like a plastic bag in the wind in that sense. It's not up to you at this juncture in your life to steer your life in any particular direction. Life is going to tell you exactly what direction you're going in. The Greek word, the ancient Greek word for the ascendant was the same word that they used for the helm of a ship, like a boat. And you can sort of think of the ascendant as being the steering wheel of the vessel of your life, or it's pointing you in the direction that your life is taking. And transits will come along and slam into that ascendant and knock you off course this way or that way. When the south node is on the ascendant, it really is like you're on a sailing boat. You're at the mercy of the wind. It's not up to you. You can do your best to maneuver the sails in one way or the other. You can do what you can with what's being thrown at you, but it's not up to you to decide where you're going to go. Whereas the years when the north node is on the ascendant, like it was maybe about 10 years ago, 9, 10 years ago, those are periods where you have all the agency, that anything that is going to happen can only happen because you make it happen. It's really it's the difference. The north node on the ascendant is like you're on a motorboat and you're steering your boat exactly where you want to go. You have a destination, you have an objective, you have a target, and you're going to meet it. That's when the north node is there. When the south node is there, it's up to you to you're on the receiving end of life. It could be great, it could be awful, but it's not up to you. To some degree, the nodes touch on the classical free will versus fate kind of phony binary. Even without astrology, it seems clear to me that different people have access to different levels of free will at different times in their life. Lots of things are fated. We didn't choose our nationalities or our bodies or our families. So right off the bat, there's some things are fated, but some things I don't understand what's going on. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, I can hear me. All right. You don't understand what's going on? What happened was my laptop apparently was unplugged and the battery ran out and I didn't notice. So it's reconnected. And yeah, it's interesting. Even though the laptop shut off because the battery ran out, I've got my iPad next to me with the live stream running with the sound off so I can read the text. Maybe that's why the live stream didn't just die. I don't know. I don't know how these things work. Um, all right. We're back. Yeah, talking about Iris's chart. I forget. I guess I was talking about the South Node and on Iris's ascendant and the difference between the years when the North Node is there and the South Node is there. Yeah, the book Iris. I was wondering. I mean, it's you've got Saturn and Mercury in the third house. I find that anyone with Saturn in the third house has to write. You know, it may or may not be the person's trade and career, but they have to write just to keep sane. Whatever, this is true. I mean, whatever house you have Saturn in, we tend to love doing whatever activity is related to whatever house Saturn is in, because when we're doing that activity, it's like we're filling the hole in our soul. And that's what that Saturn in the third house suggests to me, is that, you know, one way or the other, you got to be writing. Even if it's just journaling for your own purposes, it's you know, it has to happen. It's what you really do have to do. Okay. All right. Well, that's I'm not sure what else can I say. Oh yeah, did we hear? I'm going back through the comments. I don't know if Iris said anything about AI this year. Okay. There's so many comments. I'm sort of having trouble. Okay, there you are. Okay, yeah. I mean, that tracks. It's whatever you're doing. I mean, I get that life, you know, has the ups and downs, and you've been through a lot. But that's, you know, you're probably a really good writer. I mean, you do it because you love it. So if you sucked, it would be extra unfortunate. But yeah, that's a key thing here, is staying rooted in that part of your, you know, your personal monologue. You know, it's one thing, you know, being able to like in therapeutic situations, when you know, the talking cure, you talk about what's bothering you and it helps you work out whatever's bothering you. Similar thing at hand with the writing. Okay, AI has made a lot of your recent education obsolete, but you also use AI as a therapist. I'm sorry to hear it's made your education obsolete. But yeah, I guess that's sort of going around. It's making some people's jobs easier. It's making others obsolete. But yeah, it looks like a fairly. I mean, it tends to be like a big impact. Excuse me, I sneezed. Just a moment. I had to sneeze in the middle of a chart reading. It happens. With regard to employment, I mean, this is a tough year for a lot of people. No question about it. The way things are going. Honestly, the wealthiest people, the 1% for the next 5-6 years are going to be people who can either grow their own food or at least live a bicycle ride away from where food is being grown. Because things are breaking down. There's not going to be so much trucking. There's not going to be so much fertilizer for mass food production. Food is going to be, low. But if you have food, it might not matter so much. If you have food and a roof over your head, it might not matter so much if you have money or not, because there might not be, all that much to spend it on for a little stretch of time. Not for good, but we're heading into a rough patch now, and that touches all of us. And if you're not holding on to something right now, it can be hard to put your hand through it. Iris, what I would recommend when it comes to looking for a job, when the South Node is on your ascendant, it's not going to help you so much to be, handing out your resume or trying to set up interviews. What you need to do is to have your prospective employer find you. When the South Node is on your ascendant, you're the magnetic one. Someone can be, looking for exactly what it is that you have to offer. You can be, offered jobs, invited jobs. Sometimes the South Node works its kismet magic in the sense that, you're talking to a friend or an acquaintance and you mention that you want work and they say, oh, I know someone who's hiring, or my sister just left their job. You can take that one, or, that kind of thing. Impromptu, improvised, kismet, weird coincidence, things coming together of their own accord, not so much because of your efforts, but because of your receptivity and your ability to spot an opportunity when it comes your way. And between now and October, that's really what's most likely to work for you, is that approach. I would talk to your friends and acquaintances and colleagues about what it is that you want. Get involved in those conversations, because someone randomly chimes in, oh, you could try ... And that gets you on your way. But that's the way it's most likely to happen. You have to be magnetic. You almost, the one approach, one way I could describe this difference is when the North Node is on your ascendant, you're like a hunter. When the South Node is on your ascendant, you're a trapper. And so it's not going to work to hunt a job right now, Iris. What you need to do is trap one. I get that things are lean, and the reality is probably not all of us have employment waiting ahead of us, which is a really daunting and scary thing to say. But you do have some advantages coming your way. Venus is going to station retrograde, conjunct your sun in October, a few weeks before your birthday. And then a few weeks after your birthday. Here, why don't I show this to you rather than merely describe it? So, wait. All right, so this is October 4th, and Venus stations retrograde conjunct your sun. Your chart is nocturnal. This may or may not be a good thing or a bad thing. Venus has been going retrograde in Scorpio every 8 years your entire life. And when it happens, you're always in an air sign perfection year moving into a water sign perfection year at your birthday. And your birthday, of course, will always have the Venus retrograde happening in the middle of it. So that's interesting because I guess in 2010, Venus went retrograde in Scorpio and retrograded back into Libra right at a time when you were moving from a Libra to Scorpio perfection year in 2010 when you were 26 years old, 26 being a third house perfection year. This year you'll be moving from Aquarius to Pisces. Back in 2018, you were moving from Gemini to Cancer during the Venus retrograde in Scorpio. But even with it happening, even with the perfection years happening here, Venus is stationing retrograde on your sun nonetheless. And it winds up stationing direct in Libra in your second house by mid-November, just after your birthday, just after you've moved into the Pisces perfection year from Aquarius. At which point your Jupiter is now the Lord of the year. And and then Mars goes retrograde on your ascendant. Well, by this point, you're in the Pisces perfection year, and Mars goes retrograde close to your ascendant in January, and then retrogrades back into Leo and meets up with those others in the 12th. So I like the Venus transit, and I like the Mars transit even more. In a nocturnal chart, a Mars retrograde on the ascendant is generally really advantageous. It moves things forward. It's a shot in the arm. And even the Venus direct station in Libra in your second house, has some promise of money coming in. So it could be a few months, and we could be talking about, more about you when you're 42 than when you're 41. And I hope you can, do okay, raising your kids for now, with that in mind. But I do see considerable improvement on that front for you once we get to the end of this year, going into next year. A reading with me is never a massage. Obviously, I'm not here to be a jerk. I'm here to be constructive, but I don't just automatically say encouraging things to make someone feel better. It might feel nice in the moment, but I don't think it's really, responsible ultimately to do that. I read the chart with sincerity and in the spirit of being constructive and helpful, obviously. Just because one wants to be honest, one doesn't have to be destructive with the truth, but truthful, sincere and frank nonetheless. And so, having said that, I think 42 has a lot of promise for you, and this is a rough patch, and you'll have to try to survive on what's going on for now. But it doesn't look like it's an endless, downfall. It's a reflection of the times when there's that expression, a high tide raises all boats. This is the opposite of that. We're in a low tide period, and everyone's life is getting a little worse than it was before all this craziness got to this temperature. Yeah, jazz drumming is never obsolete, Iris. Absolutely. And the thing about AI, and what it's doing to the arts, I think that, like, ultimately it's actually going to bolster the lives of creative people, because it's going to be kind of like when the MP3 came out. Suddenly, people wanted vinyl records. Vinyl records became this coveted luxury item. Whereas they used to just be the ordinary things we bought as a kid to listen to music, before the Walkman and all that stuff. You're a bit young to remember that. But anyway, I think ultimately, AI is going to stir up a movement of people, really wanting things that are made by people, wanting to hear music made by people, wanting to see, films or look at art that's made by people. I really think so. That same logic that happened to vinyl records when the MP3 replaced them. Suddenly they were attributed more value, ironically, rather than they were kind of made obsolete temporarily, but then they returned with a fever and a sense that they were a really valuable item rather than, an ordinary mundane one. So take heart in that. And keep up the drumming. I mean, the world can never have enough drummers. That's just a fact, as far as I'm concerned. All right, let's see. I'm gonna pivot to someone else's chart. My laptop is charging, so don't worry. I won't have any more dropped, readings. I should hope. Silent Song Z, are you still there? Speak up or forever hold your peace. Because I know I've been gone for a while. People might have asked for a reading and then vanished. Oh, happy birthday, Astro Stephanie. Okay, I'm going to give Silent Song another 30 seconds. Otherwise, I'm moving on. You snooze, you lose. Just because you have silent in your name doesn't mean you can't speak up when it's time. See what I did there? Where are you? Silent Song Z. Okay, well, if it's not Silent Song Z, then it's going to be LDDE9LI. Whoever you are, born September 2nd, 1983, Pittsburgh. Are you there? Do we start reading your chart? Okay. Astro Stephanie it is. I'm not hearing from folks. Let's do that. Okay. Astro Stephanie. 1982. 06/13. Oh my God. I remember what I was doing the night before you were born. On June 12th, 1982, the night before you were born, I went to a Ritchie Blackmore Rainbow concert and the opening band was the Scorpions. That's what I was doing. It was a pretty amazing rock concert and my ears were blown out. Because that's the kind of thing I love to do. I was 2 months shy of 14 and I love that loud rock and roll. Pretty dope seeing the Scorpions before they became huge too. All right. I think I have another sneeze coming on. So I am going to mute my microphone for a second and then I will come back and read Stephanie's chart. All right. Stephanie, happy birthday to you. Wow, everyone's born in June 82. There's like 3 different people asking for readings born in June of 82. You're all just wannabe Rainbow Scorpions concerts to me. Yeah, 1982 is a trip. So 1982 is a year where like half of everyone born that year has Mars in Libra, because Mars went retrograde in Libra around February or March of that year, March I think, and it was in Libra long before that and long after. So even though Stephanie was born after Mars had been retrograde, let's see, how close is she? 32 days after the station. Yeah, that's about right. Mid-May. So that's the wild thing about 1982. You've got the Saturn Pluto with the Mars retrograde. Very, very intense charts this year. Quite the group of people. So with Stephanie's current birthday, which was yesterday, this is the solar return. Okay, new moon. New moon. Oh wait, that's not your solar return. Sorry, those are just the transits. Sloppy astrologer, sloppy. Okay, hold on. That's the one I would need. Solar return now. Boom. Very cool. And then I just make the bi wheel in this really super sexy, easy way. And there we go. You got yourself a bi wheel. So, yeah, not a new moon. I was mistaken. I was looking at the transits for tomorrow, or today rather, right now. So the solar return, yeah, the moon was over here, and your birthday, you have turned 44, so you're in the 9th house perfection year. So you've got Saturn, Neptune on the stage, and opposite your own Saturn, Pluto, Mars stuff as well. And Mars itself is in Taurus at the birthday and will be headed toward the ascendant. It's going to spend a lot of time in the rising sign this year. And since Mars is the Lord of the year, that promises a lot of movement. But the Saturn-Neptune transit, I mean, thankfully your chart is diurnal, so it's not necessarily something sinister as such. That might be the Mars transit if there's anything sinister afoot. But Saturn and Neptune transiting through the 9th involves having a kind of clarity of view. The 9th house is about looking for answers. It's about wanting to know what's on the other side of the hill. And with Saturn Neptune there in the perfected sign, it's like something that you really need to discover, something you really need to know becomes clear to you. Even if it's, it could be something that's so true it bowls you over by, because the likelihood that you would suspect it is slim. So there's some kind of revelation. There's some discovery that you're making, something that you're that you need to know, and you do wind up receiving that knowledge. And okay, and let's see here. Mars, like I said, is going to head this way. Whoops, why is that not working? Okay, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Bear with me. There we go. There we go. We have movement. So yeah, Mars goes through Gemini in July and then goes into Cancer, and by September through into October, it enters Leo, right when Venus is going retrograde at your IC. And Mars is the Lord of the year. It's now joining the Jupiter South node that are in the ascendant. And then by November, it catches up with Jupiter and the South Node, just as Venus is stationing direct on your Pluto. And then this Mars comes into Virgo and goes retrograde in January and retrogrades back into Leo. So this is what I mean. There's a lot of activity in your rising sign, Mars, Jupiter, South Node. Again, as with what I was saying to Iris about the South Node being on her ascendant in Virgo, when the South Node is on your ascendant, excuse me, when the South Node is on your ascendant, life is more about how you respond or react to what's happening and less about pursuing your own agenda or objectives. So you are in some fashion, living life on someone else's behalf. So yeah, sometimes it's a matter of looking after children or sick parents or having a spouse whose job moves them to another city and you got to follow them. These kinds of things. I mean, it can be any number of things, but the implication being, I mean, life might be fine. You might be perfectly happy with what's going on, or maybe you're not. But whatever it is, it's not something that you've sought out or pursued or tried to make happen. It's something that happens most likely because of the people you're close to. Your duty to them or your service to them. Any idea how your year is going to be playing out, Stephanie? Any particular hopes? Of course, they're not as easy to pursue this year, but yeah, what sort of things do you think are coming up this year, or that you're hoping are coming up? Where do we find you? Okay, I don't know. Maybe there's a delay. Um, wow, patiently waiting for a new satisfying career. Okay. So you don't have a career right now. Is that what I'm understanding? Are you also looking for work right now? I guess the delay is yeah, the delay doesn't really make for easy back and forth. I suppose that's one of the pitfalls to this. All right. Well, let me see here. I guess my advice to you, Stephanie, is not unlike what I was just saying to Iris, in the sense that to get work at a time like this. Okay, you were laid off. I'm sorry to hear that. Um, wow, 2023. That's a long time to be out of work. I hope things are okay. Um, you can find work this year. I mean, but it's got to find you really. The advice I'm giving is not unlike what I was saying to Iris. You have the Lord of the Year crossing your ascendant. That helps. Like I was just saying, Mars transits, especially the retrograde transit to the ascendant, generally works out for the individual. Your chart is diurnal, but nonetheless, it tends to work out. All things being equal. And the Mars retrograde does start in your second house as well, going opposite your moon. To my mind, Stephanie, you look like a very sort of community team player type of person. You're I don't mean Community, the TV show. I mean you're community minded. You're tribal. You generally work in groups and yeah, you're a team player and most likely, I would imagine the way you can find work is by keeping in touch with former coworkers and talking to them, because the whole thing again is about stirring up opportunities that come your way. You can't approach them directly. They have to find you, or you have to find each other. But that would be it's going to be hard to just pound the pavement, knock on doors. Is less likely to work at a time like this. So yeah, work those connections of yours. Stay in touch with the people that matter to you, the people that you'd like to work with again, and something can find you. Again, I think when we get to the end of the year, it really does pick up a bit. I'm sorry to hear it's been such a rough journey. I guess your birthday in 2023 would have been. You were 41 in this Capricorn year. So you've gone through the Capricorn, the Aquarius, the Pisces, and now you're in the Aries year. That's more than enough, I should say. It's time for you to have some work. All right. Let's talk to Salty Mama Soul Tribe. Networking gives you the ick. You look like a tribal player to me, Stephanie. You look like you have people. And, desperate times call for desperate measures. I know networking sounds really cheesy, but it doesn't have to be if they're the people you like anyway. I'm talking about coworkers that you like as people, and that is a superpower. It may give you the ick, but it's going to help you find what you need. All right, on to Salty Mama. I'm just going to call you Salty Mama. Oh, I'll call you Soul Tribe. It's a long name. Salty Mama Soul Tribe. Can I say it 10 times fast? Who knows? I'm not going to try. December 18th, 1970, and 10:49 a.m. in Kansas City. All right. I got the Lil Richard song in my head now. I don't mind that. That's all right. Come from the land of Charlie Parker. Nothing wrong with that. So I mentioned, Partly Rowdy is saying, I mentioned road trips yesterday on your reading and scheduled the road trip to Colorado today. Okay. Astrology is fascinating. Thanks for sharing there, Partly Rowdy. All right, let's look at Salty Mama. Salty Mama Soul Tribe. And let's get a look at this solar return and see what we can find here. All right. So Salty Mama was born with Aquarius rising with the North Node on the ascendant. That's a Salty Mama indeed. And the moon in Virgo in the 8th in a diurnal chart, the sun in Sagittarius in the 11th. So there's the tribe. When the sun is in the 11th, there is a soul tribe indeed. You are not alone. And you are 55 and you're going to be 56, which means you'll be having that glorious birthday. 56 for a chart like yours, it's a doozy. It's a doozy. Yeah, you look like you've got quite the year ahead of you, Salty Mama. So let's get to the transits, shall we? Let's just tuck that back and come here. Still getting used to this. All right. So at 55, you're in this Virgo perfection year, and the South Node is coming back into Leo. So it does. I mean, it started the year in the perfected sign, and which has got to be especially frustrating for someone like you, who, generally speaking, knows what you want, how to get it, and you pursue it, but something's sort of holding you back there. However, when we get into the second half, once we get past the summer, the North Node, there's that nodal return coming in. The South Node has moved out of Virgo, so you don't quite have, you're not totally trapped by the gates of fate. And things start moving through you're going to turn 56 after the Venus retrograde. So Venus goes retrograde on your Mars and retrogrades back into Libra, stations direct. And then we get to your birthday and you turn 56, and that is the glorious 56th birthday I was talking about earlier. That's a little too far. The 56th solar return is a nodal return, and it's a Venus return. And it is really a year in life where you feel like you've really become the person you were always meant to become. It's a really interesting birthday for that reason, the way it aligns the nodal cycle with Venus. And of course, the North Node's coming back to the ascendant, that which you were born with. So it's sort of, it's almost, it feels like you're back, you're back, and there was some kind of diversion for the last 9 years, 8 years, 2018, I guess, when the South Node was on your ascendant, and nothing was working out. And right now I can imagine that it's very frustrating, that it feels like you're spinning your wheels. But when you get to the end of the year, you really feel complete and whole again, and you're likely to be much closer to your goals than you happen to be right now. All right. I'm gonna do one more. I'm getting a little tired. It is late. It's 2 a.m. for me. In 4 hours, I'm waking up my kid for school, so that's where I'm sitting. But I really wanted to do some of these, and I'm enjoying it, and I hope y'all are benefiting. Let's see here. Who am I gonna? Just one more. Okay, let's do CD. I'm enjoying this. I am going to wind this down after this last reading because I'm getting tired. But do consider scanning those QR codes that you see on the screen. One QR code gets you a 20% discount on 1 hour astrology consultations with yours truly. And, where we can speak without the prying eyes of all these live stream attendees. And the other QR code gets you a perpetual 20% off a subscription to Nechepso Astrology software, the software that you see me using here. It's got all kinds of bells and whistles that I haven't even pulled out. It does all kinds of stuff that no other astrology software can even hope to do. I kid you not. So check it out. It's such cool stuff, and we're really proud of it. And it's really useful for professional astrologers like me, and but also for student astrologers. For instance, it's got all this nifty stuff where you can click on a planet and you get all this information and interpretations, and all kinds of stuff. Other nifty facets. Go into the main setting. You can go here to personal and do things like tarot. We have these wild tarot spreads. You can do all kinds of spreads, card of the day, card of the month, card of the year, card table, all that stuff. So this whole choice of tarot spreads. So we got that. We got a whole numerology section. We've got something here called circles, which is where we keep track of the charts of family and friends. These are family and friends of mine. And it was my brother Michael. It was my wife Anna. Stepkids, nephews, best buds, beloved daughter. So we, and I can click on their charts and check them out. And then we have this sort of snapshot area where you can look at the transits of all those same people who are in your circle, your friends and family. And then we'll have a social media coming up network. We had the prototype running for a little bit last year, but Third House is our social media, astrology centered social media site connected totally to Nichepso. All right, so back to our regularly scheduled reading. Let's okay, CD, let's look at your chart here. I'm glad people love the tarot. Yeah, get a subscription, scan that code. You won't regret it. So, CD 3777. You were born, where's that data? Yeah, there we are. March 7th, 1968, 3:21 a.m. in Placerville. Placerville. Sounds like a nice placer. I'm a silly, silly man. Okay, let's have a look here. Oh no, I feel another sneeze coming on. I'm going to mute my microphone for a second. Well, I guess if I was one of the seven dwarfs today, I would be sneezy, which is quite a twist because I'm usually either grumpy or sleepy or whatever. Okay, let's get to our friend CD 3777. Can I call you 3777 for short? No, never mind. I'm being silly again. Oh wow, yeah, that's true. 1968. Okay. So you are quite the Pisces. You are 58 years old. So you're in the Scorpio perfection year, and Venus is going to go retrograde on your midheaven in October. Oh my. It is a nocturnal chart, so that's not necessarily something unfortunate, but let's see here. The Lord of the Year, you have Mars in Aries natally, and transiting Mars was in Pisces with the North Node on your birthday. You were born with, here, I'll show you this. Use the marker tool. So you were born with Mars North Node, and your birthday this year had Mars North Node. So that's a powerful recurrence, especially in a nocturnal chart. And especially because you're in a Scorpio perfection year, which is ruled by the Mars. So unlike the last, not the last person did have North Node on the ascendant, but the two people before them had transiting South Node on the ascendant, and you're not in that boat. You're going for the gusto here, CD. Whatever it is you're doing, you won't rest until it is done. The North Node is relentless. The North Node is like, Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th movies, just never, ever, ever dies. Except the North Node also never shuts up, and Jason Voorhees doesn't speak. But aside from that, they're exactly alike. No, not really. So let's go look at this Venus transit on the midheaven, and get a sense of how these transits are playing out. All right. There we go. So, CD, Venus stationing retrograde on your midheaven this October in the perfected sign. What are you going to do that's going to shock the people? Are you going to, I don't know, send a stripper to your boss for his birthday? That's the kind of thing I'm looking at. It could be any number of things. Venus is the planet of consensus and conformity. And every 18 months, Venus goes retrograde, at which point consensus and conformity are up for grabs. Every human being has some view of civilization that they think is beautiful and precious and must be preserved and defended, and some other facet of society that is base and loathsome and must be, subdued, if not fully stamped out. Of course, the problem is one person's idea of beauty and peace is another person's view of something loathsome and undesirable. And that's what we get with Venus retrograde is someone deliberately or by character does or says or wears something that is provocative, considered rude by someone else. Because the Venus retrograde is about breaking the rules, not breaking the law, but breaking the rules. Venus retrograde is when either cheating spouses are discovered or when, extramarital affairs first start to happen, are initiated. Venus retrograde in Scorpio, sometimes like the last Venus retrograde in Aries a little over a year ago, the day it stationed retrograde, Zelensky goes into the Oval Office and some guy says, "Why aren't you wearing a suit?" That's a very Venus retrograde sentence. Why are you not wearing the uniform considered appropriate for this particular occasion and setting? Of course, the guy who said that didn't realize that heads of state who are currently at war often are wearing battle fatigues. Whenever Churchill was at the White House during the Second World War, he was always in his fatigues. So there was nothing wrong with Zelensky being dressed the way he was when he was there. First time he went to the Oval Office in 2019 or 2018, he was wearing a suit because it wasn't a full-blown war yet. It was just the Crimea they were fighting over. But anyway, I digress. CD 3777, that Venus retrograde is going to mean something relative to your reputation or your standing within a particular community. Maybe it's something that works to your advantage. Maybe you do offend someone, but it's for a good cause and it makes you the right allies. But there is something, provocative and potentially defiant and somewhat antisocial, I suppose, about the Venus retrograde. The Venus retrograde signifies anything that people would gossip about, anything that, gets people muttering about things. Probably the place where Venus retrograde is probably the biggest asset is in the arts. Because if you're a musician releasing an album or a filmmaker releasing a movie or an author releasing a book, if it comes out during a Venus retrograde, you kind of want your new work to be provocative and talked about and gossiped about. You have to break rules in the arts. It's expected. It's necessary. And provoking with your art. The great art, of course, is supposed to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. And Venus retrograde is really good at that. So not necessarily, an unfortunate experience. That it depends on how you feel about who's offended and what your position is. But it does look to me like you have some kind of rendezvous with controversy. And I wish you the very best with that. All right. I am wearing out. It is 2:15. And like I said, in less than 4 hours, I got to get my kid up and send her off to school. So I'm going to bid you all a fair adieu for now. I am going to try and do this each and every day now. Got to figure out how to set up those little tchotchkes that get me payments and things like that. But in the meantime, if you are so inclined, please do avail yourself of those 2 QR codes, or at least one of them. The one at the bottom is a QR code. It gets you a 20% discount on 1-hour astrology consultations with yours truly. And the other QR code up at the top right corner is gets you a 20% discount, perpetual discount on a subscription to Nichepso. And it's a lifetime subscription unless you cancel it. So if you use that QR code and you subscribe to Nichepso and you just keep using Nichepso for the next 50 years, you'll be paying that price that you signed up for today. Quite the bargain. Well, I mean, who knows if the dollar collapses, we may have to, course correct on that matter. But all things being equal, if we proceed with some amount of consistency, which I understand isn't necessarily guaranteed in this climate, but the subscription is yours if you sign up for it, and you get to use this marvelous astrology software. It runs on Windows, it runs on Mac, it runs on Linux. So, no more wishing you had a different operating system just so you could run an astrology software. I've been running Windows on this MacBook, or on whatever MacBooks I've had over the years, since 2006. This is like my 4th since then. So yeah, no more of that. No, everything's integrated. It's really great. Like, I know Adam Ellenbass is going to be recommending his students use this software, which is great for teachers because you're going to have students who have Mac, Linux, and Windows operating systems. And this way, everyone can be, on the same page, using the same equipment, or at least the same software. So yeah, get into it. And thank you so much. Thank you for attending. And yeah, I am going to do these also during my daytime, which is maybe late at night for some of you in North America. But for European listeners, check in during the day, and of course my fellow African listeners. And yeah, in Asia, I guess it's always a little later there than it is here. But hopefully you've been tuning in and enjoying this as well. So good night to all of you, beautiful people of planet Earth. Thank you again. I really love astrology. I love doing this. So thank you for helping me do the one thing I'm really meant to do. So blessing, blessing, blessing. Love you all. Cheers.